you addressed about the need to extend middle class tax cuts, which I guess is going to become a big issue after the election. There's this strain of rhetoric saying you need to extend all the tax cuts, including the ones to the wealthy, because it helps quote unquote job creators, people who are probably own companies and whatnot. What's kind of your take on that line of rhetoric, and do you feel that those tax rates need to be raised because of deficit reduction or whatnot? What should happen with those?
Well, so there's a couple of issues here. One is that we clearly do face a deficit reduction issue, and that there is a requirement to be balanced in our approach to that, and that does say we have to do something on the revenue side as well as on the spending side. And I think anyone who looks at the economics of deficit reduction is going to come to that conclusion. You just can't do enough on one side alone. So, that is driving, taking a hard look at tax reform and saying, how should we be doing this? Secondly, there's the issue of what's happened over the last 10 to 20 years, which has been widening inequality that has produced much more rapidly rising incomes among people at the upper end of the income distribution. So, when we say we're going to take off the Bush tax cuts, realize we're talking about going back to the same tax levels that people were at in the 1990s, when we had enormously effective economic growth, very high rates of investment, a very successful economy. So I think it's very hard to argue that going back to those tax rates for higher income families is going to produce a problem.
Another issue that's been brought up, I think, for the last couple of decades is outsourcing, which is companies building facilities or, I'm sure you're well aware with outsourcing.
Yeah.
Number one, was there anything done when the Democrats had Congress from 2009 to 2011 to alleviate that? And number two, what sort of legislation do you feel could hypothetically go through Congress to, clamp down on that kind of practice?
Well, between 2009 and 2011, we were in such an amazing economic crisis that I think that was taking people's first priority. The whole lot of things happened that related to that economic crisis, trying to simply strengthen American business again, including saving the American automobile manufacturer. GM would, may not have existed, and we'd be buying even more cars from overseas under those circumstances. That was a rather unique time. Your second part of your question, I'm sorry, give it to me again.
If let's just say the president had a magic wand and could pass legislation that would curtail outsourcing, what would that be, and how do you think that would impact a business's operations?
So let me be clear. I mean, I am an economist. I work for the Commerce Department, and I believe in fair and open trade. And I think the way that we're going to basically reduce outsourcing and increase insourcing is by making the American business environment the best place for businesses to be. Right? You don't do it by erecting artificial barriers that in the long run really end up hurting you. That's where things like, as I mentioned, investing in innovation, investing in infrastructure, making sure we have a high quality workforce, making sure we have a fair and equitable tax system, all of those things are going to matter for making this the environment that people stay in or even bring jobs back to, or even foreign businesses come into. And I think that's the right way to work on both reducing outsourcing and increasing insourcing. It's those reasons that are bringing companies back into the United States.